I want to share with you some things that I've learned over the last year. I'm a mother, and me and my family have been touched by gender ideology and the impacts that can cause in families. Some people call it gender identity, interchangeable. It means the same thing. You might have noticed a lot of people rising up, whether it's parents protesting at schools, whether it's children saying they don't want to be taught this in school. A lot of people have been standing up recently. And you might ask yourself, why are all these people rejecting all the progress that we've made? Weren't we totally okay with homosexuality? What happened? The story behind why so many parents have been expressing their anger in so many different ways is very complicated. And I can't speak for everyone. I can speak for myself and for the people that I've been in contact with and I've spoken to. There's a lot on the internet, so I'm sure that you can learn the reasons why other people have been standing up, but I won't cover this in this video. So gender ideology originates really with gender studies, and that used to be called women's studies in the universities. And these programs were created in the 1960s, and it has some roots in Marxist thought but it's sort of critical of Marxist thought, but it still comes from that line of thinking. Now, these women's studies programs were created to advance women's rights, and a lot of good did come out of that. So I don't want to say that it's all bad, but what it also did is it created this concept of the patriarchy. And in that concept, to make women equal to men, it proposed that there were no differences between men and women, or male and female. And when there's no difference between male, female, man, woman, to deconstruct the social constructed idea of what it means to be female, you create a situation where anyone can be a woman, anyone can be a man. It's just a question of what you feel like in your head. And that's how we get to gender studies and gender ideology. So fast forward a few decades, and gender as a social construct is sort of the thinking within these ideas. And in that, the idea is that we should undo all of the normative ideas within sex and gender because they are regressive. And so we unpick all of these things. And by doing that, by unpicking or unlearning what we understand to be man, woman, male, female, a person can discover their true, authentic self, almost like their a gendered soul. So if your soul is a different sex or gender than you feel, then you are trans. And that's kind of a very wide overview of what gender ideology proposes. So every school board in Ontario is required to include gender ideology in all of their subjects, not just sex ed. Sex ed parents can opt out of, but when you include gender ideology within the entire curriculum, parents can't opt out of that. So that's one of the first issues. Also, numerous leaked documents show that schools are required to collect data on the students' gender identity. So to do that, you have to instruct, including prepubescent school children, not high school, also high school children, but also young children, about sexuality. And so you have to really describe all the different types of sexualities that a person can have and all the different types of gender expressions that a person can have, and really inform the child on what all of the choices are. And then they collect data on each individual child. So what gender expression are you? And this is tricky because introducing sex and sexuality to young children is developmentally inappropriate. So often what happens with these young people is a lot of them who tend to identify with a creative gender expression might have or often have other things going on in their lives. So for example, autism or depression or anxiety or an eating disorder, or generally not being well. And when they select an expression, a creative expression, they're celebrated. And so they are elevated from marginalized and feeling bad about themselves to being absolutely celebrated within the school. And in a sense, there's nothing really wrong with that. But with that comes a social transition, and a social transition can lead, or often leads, to a medical transition. And this is what happened in my life, is that parents were not informed, and the child was given, or went to the doctor and given cross-sex hormones and puberty blockers without consent or knowledge from the parents. And when the parents say something, they are lied to, and they are called all kinds of names. So those names could be abusive, bigot, it's just awful and vile. So the issue is also with parents' right to be involved in their children's lives and to have a say in what the best course of action is for their children. Often parents would like to see these comorbidities be addressed before children are immediately pushed into transition. But the problem we have here in Canada is that the affirmation model says your child, if they say they're trans, then they are trans, and we put them on a pathway to medicalization. And that's not necessarily going to cure all these other issues. And with the parents being lied to and vilified and called all kinds of things, it creates a lot of tension. So when a parent does not affirm, but the doctors and the psychologists and the counselors and all of the medical professionals and educational professionals are immediately affirming the child, and the parents say, hang on, wait a minute, the child becomes, the parents are looked at as abusive, and that message gets put into children's heads. And I can tell you that there are abusive parents out there, that exists, but the vast majority of parents love their children and want the best for their children. And they want to be able to make those decisions. And they don't want the state or the government to tell them what those best decisions should be. And this is why parents are standing up. Many parents have already stood up, and often those parents are vilified and harassed. They've lost their jobs, they've lost friends, they've even lost their children into this, frankly, what I consider to be a cult. And we need to come to an understanding that families together are strong. It's good for the child's mental health. It's good for everyone to have good, strong, healthy families. And I think that it's time that the school boards and the teachers realize that. So I'm showing my face and I'm speaking out as a parent who's been affected by this. And I know that there's a lot of you out there that feel isolated. They feel like they can't speak or they don't know what to do. If you feel that way, by all means, get in touch. I would love to talk to you. I would love to hear your story. It can be completely anonymous. But you're not alone, and there's many of us. In fact, people who feel this way are the vast majority. If you start talking about this in your life, you'll see that most people don't think this is okay. And the people that don't understand it yet, when they get informed about it, realize the horrors that are going on in our schools. So I'm here to tell you, you're not alone.